This workshop. Once again, my name is Patricia VanHook, and this is entitled "What's Love Got to Do with It?" And does anybody want to respond? Do you know what love is? Anybody?
Chemical imbalance.
Okay. This session is going to be all about you, the individual. I am merely here as a facilitator. We're going to talk about the 5 love languages as described in the book by Gary Chapman entitled The 5 Love Languages. And the premise of the book is that we typically show love the way that we receive love. However, talk to each other. You gotta speak louder.
¿Para algún proceso?
Sí, me gustan tus zapatos.
Buongiorno.
Me levanté a las 5, me bañé, luego me cambié.
Je ne sais pas.
Okay, thank you. So, I don't know what they said.
I know what both of them said.
Okay. I was like, what? So, one was speaking French, and the other was speaking Spanish, right? And so, because I'm a visual person, I always have to use visuals in my presentations. So that was a visual to show you that when you speak different love languages, just as they were speaking different languages, we don't know what each other's talking about. And in the book, the 5 love languages are acts of service, quality time. You don't have to write it down. I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you a handout. Acts of service, quality time, receiving gifts, physical touch, and words of affirmation. So those are the 5 love languages according to the book by Gary Chapman. And we're going to take a little quiz, each of you, so that you can determine what your primary and secondary love language is. Remember, this is all about you. You will keep these documents for yourself. And then we're going to talk about some relationships that you've had that might not have lasted, and you might be able to see why. So in a relationship that I was most recently in a married situation, my love language might be quality time. Okay, quality time means uninterrupted, your undivided attention, just you and I, either engaging in conversation, right? Or something else. So quality time and, not yet. Quality time and physical touch. Okay, so those are my primary, secondary love language. So what I learned after the divorce was his love language is words of affirmation and acts of service. So, for an example, if we would take a long road trip, he's always on the phone with somebody else, right? Because he needs words of affirmation. And if I'm the person that's holding you accountable, and saying, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and you're wrong, and you're.
That's not very affirming.
It's not affirming at all. So guess what? He really is not trying to talk to me. Okay? But I didn't know, right? And so in the car, I'm like, so how was your day? And what did you do? And who are you with? And trying to engage in conversation when I'm actually just being annoying. He's like, would she just shut up? Right? And so that's a relationship, ultimately, that's never going to work. Is that right? Yeah, because we're speaking like Spanish and French. She doesn't know what she's saying in French, and she doesn't know what she's saying in Spanish. So by show of hands, how many of you are married? Okay. So, can you help me? So this is for the husband and for the wives. No, it's both of them. It's both of them. Both pages.
Thank you.
And everyone else, another one for husband? Okay, great. So I want you to just take this little quiz, and then these are singles. They're 2 pages for everyone else. And then everyone else gets it. It's 2 pages. So I want you to just do this little quick exercise. Does anybody need a pen?
Yeah.
Okay. If you would remember, this is for you, so please answer it honestly. And no, it's okay, ladies. Hold on. It's a 2-pager. It's 2 pages.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm telling him wrong.
Okay. Anyone else need a pen?
Okay.
So answer it honestly. Do you need a pen? Because it's for you.
I didn't really something that I was familiar with this, and should I still do it?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. You need one? You need a pen?
And then if you have an extra one, if I can have an extra one.
Absolutely. Ladies, you can go and sit where it's more comfortable for you, okay? Okay.
1 page of the,
So all I need is a 2, because
the second page, because I had 30 sheets.
Okay. So what I want to tell you while you're doing that is what I've learned is love is a one-way street. There's a one-way street and there's two-way street, right? I'm going to wait and let you do that. Here, I'll look that first.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead and answer those.
I know that you're supposed to pick one. But
Yeah, you pick one out of each, and then at the end, you're going to count the number of A's, B's, D's, yeah. A person whose love language is receiving gifts would ultimately give someone a gift, because that's what says I love you to me, if it's gifts, right? And then I get mad because why didn't you jump up and down like I did when I got that gift? You know what I mean? Right, so it becomes frustrating. Are you single or married?
Single.
Okay.
So whichever one you have the most
Is your primary.
Yeah, I know that.
The one that you have the most is your primary, and then the second is your secondary. We like it all, but there is a primary and a secondary. And when you get the results, for some of you, you might be surprised, and for some of you, you might say, that makes sense. That is me.
This is like,
Right?
I got 10 and 1, 2 and 1, and then all the rest of them are even. And as I was reading through, I was like, you know what? I communicate pretty effectively in all the languages. Like if you do something nice for me, I can receive that as love. If you say something nice to me, I can receive it as love. The one thing that I guess, and consistent with the survey, is if you just buy something for me, I'm questioning. I'm wondering what your motives are,
Right.
and it doesn't really show so much as love. So this is good.
So one of the things, if I can get your attention, one of the things that, after the divorce, the reason that I understand that his love language was acts of service, because every morning he'd get up and he'd run my bath water, he'd go downstairs and make coffee and bring the coffee up to the bedroom or in the bathroom, wherever I am getting ready. And I'm like, and? Like, what is it? Like whatever. But I mean, he was showing love. But I didn't receive it as love. Because when we drive from Oakland to Stockton, I want you to talk to me. Get off the phone and stop checking email and staying up all night and well, can you come to bed with me or something? So that's why it's important in our relationships that we understand what we're working with and who we're dealing with. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so anybody have any surprises with the results of their little quiz? Yes, sir.
Yeah, most definitely. In my personal opinion, I don't believe I fall in none of those categories because from what I've learned, at least in my short 21 years in life, I think love is, from a man's perspective, is blessing your behind every day, and I think that falls under all those components of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch, because that's what it takes to even love a person. So that's what I've learned, and that's what I'm sticking with. Because I know personally through the people that I've met with and the experiences that come with gaining that knowledge. That is.
That's your story and you're sticking to it.
That's my opinion about it. That's the way I'm going to stick with it. So, yeah.
Okay, so let me just say that sometimes you have to unlearn everything that you've learned, right? Because and when I generally do these, I usually do it from a spiritual perspective. But I know this is not church or the mosque, right? So I wasn't going to bring that reference into it. However, love is unconditional. Love is a one-way street, going down this one-way street, and it begins in the heart of the lover. When I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do to stop me from loving you when I truly love you, okay? It has nothing to do with working hard. It has nothing to do with provision of a house or a car or a couch, right? Love is sacrificing self for the well-being of someone else, right? Ideally, when you fall in love with someone, ideally you want a one-way street going this way and him being a one-way street or her being a one-way street coming this way, right? But it's not conditional, and it doesn't have anything to do with, the Bible talks about love is patient, love is kind. It does not boast. It does not envy. It does not hold record of wrong. How many of us don't hold record of wrong? How many of us take an opportunity to remind our significant other about, 2 years ago or 2 weeks ago, you did this or that, right? But real and true godly love, it doesn't matter. It holds no records of wrong. And I typically will use the example of my sons. I have 2 sons. And I can say that I love those 2 young men. Love them. And I can say I love them because they have not always been lovable. Any parents in here? They have not always been lovable. That's a sign of true love when you can love someone who's not lovable. Okay? They just wrong. Even when my son, married, babies, and I tell the wife, he just wrong. Divorce him. I'm so serious because I love him, but I do not condone when they're wrong, right? And that's what love is. Love is no matter what. It doesn't matter what. Girl, look, I can talk about them, but y'all can't talk about them. I don't care what they do, right? Okay, so I want to talk about affirming, words of affirmation, okay? Can anybody give me some examples of affirming words?
I'm proud of you.
Yes.
Good job.
Yes. Anybody else?
I appreciate you.
Yes.
You didn't disappoint me.
I love you. Yes. Yes. I cherish you. Yes. Anybody else? You're wonderful. I simply adore you. All of that. Yes. So, do we have anybody in the house with a primary words of affirmation? Yeah. Guys, if any of her friends, yeah. If anybody is their friend, now you know how to treat them.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Anyone whose primary love language is words of affirmation. Those are the people, and you don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to tell us your love language. But those are the people who, that's how you show love to them. And if that's your spouse, was my spouse, that's how you have to keep them interested in you, is giving them love the way that they receive love. Does that make sense? Okay, so we talked about it's encouragement, it's praise, it's kind words. Yes, did you have a comment or question?
I had a question.
Yes.
So, because we can't just go around and make people fill this out all the time, we can kind of gauge how they receive it based on how they give. Just in everyday, not necessarily our spouse, but like you said,
Anyone.
friends.
Yes.
Yeah, so if we see that they're the type of person that compliments people a lot, we can probably infer
yes.
that they like to receive a compliment.
That is correct. Because what I tell people, I do some counseling with women, and what I say is, when you're in a relationship, the two of you have to get the same information. If you are going to some workshops on relationships, it's really ridiculous unless your partner come with you, because at some point you're gonna not really try to hear what he's saying, and you're gonna have more information, right? And you're gonna feel even more empowered. And you want your partner to feel empowered as well. Because at the end of the day, come up here for a second. At the end of the day, we attract who we are, right? So you have not heard me stand up here and say that my ex-husband was crazy, did you? You didn't hear me say that he's stupid, right? Because at the end of the day, stupid attracts stupid, right? So that would be a reflection on me. I'm telling you, if you are in a relationship and you continuously sit with your girlfriends or your guy friends, and you like, man, she's a crackhead for sure. Or girl, he's so stupid. If you do that, then you need to look in the mirror.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay?
I don't do it.
Because, listen, let me tell you, the truth of the matter is, we attract who we are. So, if you have two people, right, bent over, limping, right, then they're together. I don't even notice that she all bent over, limping, and crazy. Because, guess what? I'm bent over, limping, and crazy. I only notice when I begin to get well. You stay down there, you still crazy. It's only when I begin to get well do I look and say, what's wrong? Oh, bent over,
Good. That's good.
crippled,
That's good.
crazy, right? Thank you. Right? Because we attract who we are. And then some people begin to heal faster than the other person.
Yeah.
And then when because I'm telling you, sickness attracts sickness, and healthy people attract healthy people. The brother who was talking earlier, who said something about when you have a healthy love, I bear witness to that, because there is a difference between healthy love and sick love, okay? And I'm telling you, if you're talking about him and saying he's crazy, you crazy too. Don't forget that. It is a reflection of you, because if you were healthy, a sick man can't even say nothing to you. Don't even want to. Okay? Or a sick woman, if you healthy, a sick woman is not going to even approach you. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, what I like to say is when somebody says something about you, the only way they're able to identify it in you is because that quality is within themselves.
Absolutely.
And so it basically is.
Absolutely.
Take one to know
Take
one.
one
And so,
to know one.
but what I also like to say, though, is like you might be able to identify a quality in a person that maybe have been you. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that's still you.
Absolutely.
Because I had an experience and I was like, you know, it was funny to me because I recognized myself in her, but that wasn't me anymore.
Right, right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just looking at the fact of unconditional love.
Yes, sir.
See how it factors when someone is in love, for instance, and when they're, that's basically considered unconditional at the time that they're in love. It's romantically in love, right? Mm-hmm. But then when that romanticism ends, the unconditional part of it ends as well, right?
No. Well,
okay. Well, a lot of times.
Let me tell you my experience. Okay, when you really love somebody, you can't turn it off. I don't care what you do. There are 3 degrees of separation, right? There is physical, there is emotional, and there's spiritual. And I'm telling you, when you go before the pastor, the judge, whoever, and you make that commitment between you and him and God, right? And then you go home and you consummate that marriage. How do you consummate a marriage? Anybody?
Sex.
That's right, sex. Those single ladies, you wonder why you're not married? Maybe you married to too many people. Single men, you wonder why you're not married? Maybe you don't have to wonder. Maybe you married to too many people. Because when you are trying to get an annulment and you go before the judge, the first question he asks you is, has the marriage been consummated? Before there was this ceremonial thing, right? The Bible talks about he came upon her, right? That's how you become one with someone, right? And so that's why I just broke up with, what's your name?
Daniel.
I just broke up with Daniel. And now I'm with, what's your name? Marcus. Now I'm with Marcus, right? So now I'm sleeping with Marcus, and I'm saying, Marcus, no, hit me here and do that and turn me over and slap me. And, okay? He don't know nothing about that because that's what he used to do. Right? And because he's still in my spirit, I'm just telling you the truth. He's still in my spirit, right? Because I haven't taken enough time in between this one and that one to purge all of that out of me, that I still have that in my spirit. So now I want you to make me feel like he used to make me feel.
Can't do it.
And so I never really get to experience him. Does that make sense? Yeah. It makes sense. So, yes, sir.
So it's kind of like just baggage.
Baggage.
You know
battery
what it is?
low. We are all born with. Oh, yours broke.
It's not broke. It's only one side.
Oh, okay.
It's not a backpack.
We are all born with invisible backpacks, right? So now y'all getting into my forgiveness session. No, we are all born with invisible backpacks. And every time somebody offends you, they put a rock in your backpack. Some people put boulders, depending on how
big
bad
the
it was,
offense is.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point, and then when you do something to somebody, one go in theirs and yours, okay? And so at some point, when you get this backpack, it's so heavy, you begin to try to cope with it, right? And you bent over, right? Because it's heavy. And at some point, you have to eliminate that heavy load. And that takes really the Holy Spirit in truth, okay? And it takes time, right? And so that's why it's important that we leave time in between relationships. I was sharing with my office mate. We were in a conversation last week, and I see your hands. And I was saying, I'm just so grateful. I've been celibate for 3 years and a few months, because, since my divorce, I just haven't, because I need to heal and I need to deal with all of these issues, right? And she was like, yeah, we all celibate here and celibate there. And I'm like,
Discount my celibacy.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, because, so sometimes that is real. But let me tell you, people don't want to believe the truth. People would rather believe a lie, or because we operate within our own stuff, right? I know that ain't something I could do. So then you can't do it either, right? And so, and I'm not going to try to defend anything. So I just say, girl, you're right. And leave it alone. Because that's something that's between me and my God. Right? I don't have to convince anybody that I am who I am. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'll just raise my hand like, yeah.
Can I say
really
something?
Yes.
You know what I was gonna say, it's funny you said that, speaking of, me and him, right? Because that's how a lot of people are in today's society, is most people are cargo trains, because cargo trains pick it up and just drag it to the next city.
Yeah.
Don't dump that load off, pick up another load, go keep on going. And because I had heard a conversation, the brother was telling another brother, you need to learn how to be a choo-choo train, because a choo-choo train pick it up, take it to the next city, drop it off, and then pick something else up. But when you got a cargo train, you keep picking stuff up, then everybody makes your load, then you go with the theory of the rocks in the backpack.
Right.
Yes, I thought that was pretty good.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to say real quick, it's interesting you brought that up, especially with you and her being old and bent over.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm married, and my husband lost his mother a year ago. And unfortunately, his dad died. We got news within 2 months. So he died 12 days after the mom, a year apart. So I wasn't able to go to his mom's funeral, but I was able to go to his dad and supporting him. So at that time, it was a loss for both of us. So I was helping him through the grieving process. And it's funny you mentioned that when you were walking together, you don't realize how you look. Well, I've been telling him, straighten your back up. Stop limping like this and walking like you're 80 years old. Straighten up, straighten up. Well, he has back problems, with his back. But he's 7'1". So he's taller than me, but yet I notice he's leaning. And straighten your back up, straighten your back up. And I think what it was, what you were saying, I was grieving his dad passing. I'm not over it completely, but I accepted it,
Right.
and he's still trying to. So by you saying that you got better,
Yeah, some people.
I noticed that he's leaning more and not straightening up. Of course, he's in pain too, but
Yeah.
it has a lot to do with his grieving. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes, yes, and when somebody gets healthier quicker than the other person, I'm not saying that you ought to just leave that like,
Right.
you know, I'm cool now, and I just can't keep walking around with you looking crazy, right? No,
But,
I mean,
yeah.
when you love somebody, you want them to become healthy just like you are, right? And so whatever help that you get, because we can only do better when we know better. And then I always take it a step further and say the only way to know better is to continuously get new information. You can't use the same information and think that you can do something different. You have to continuously, even though I do these sessions, I have to continuously read, I have to continuously talk to people, right, and get new information, right, because we are consistently growing every day. Is that right? Okay, so the next love language is receiving gifts, right? So what's the biggest barrier to being in love with somebody whose love language is receiving gifts? Say it loud. Money. I did. I sure took all that money. But listen, so yeah, that's a barrier. When you are in love with someone who has receiving gifts as a love language, that's an issue. And so, yeah.
I was gonna say, does it have to be like physical? I mean, it can be.
No, and that's what I was going to say, that you just get creative, right? With, you know, I had a person who used to work with me. She used to use pillowcases as wrapping material, right, to wrap gifts with. And she would, like, sew the name on it, you know. I mean, that's so creative. Getting some colored thread or thick thread or something and just sewing their name on it and using it as I mean, you get creative. Because at the end of the day, when you love somebody, don't you want them to feel loved? You want them to feel loved, right? I mean, yeah, I want to feel loved. You know, I wanted somebody to talk to me and spend some time with me and get off that phone, right? I'm sorry. You know, yes, you want that person to feel loved. So really, that's what this is all about. You can choose, because love is a choice. It's a choice. You choose to love somebody with all of the baggage that they have, and all of the issues that they have, because we all have some, right? We all have some baggage. I did a workshop once, and I told you I'm visual and I'm kind of crazy, but I had on a long jacket, and I had these words, you know, envy and jealousy, and I had all these negative words, and I had them all pinned on my clothes, right? And I went on stage, and I said, I'm not going to tell y'all, but I got some issues. You know, of course, you can read them all, right? all over my clothes. You were there, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had some issues. And so we all have issues, but we ought not have the same issues forever, right? Because we are supposedly trying to get better and better all the time. And so I dropped those issues, but I still have some issues, right? And so we choose to love who we love, even though they may have some issues, okay? So the gifts, you know, you can try to do some crafts and just get creative with what you give a person, but at the end of the day, that person wants to feel loved as well, okay? So acts of service, right? Some examples of acts of service. Anybody?
Cleaning the bathroom.
Hmm?
Cleaning the bathroom.
Cleaning the bathroom? Well, if it's, I don't know. Okay. Okay, acts of service. It depends on if that person feels like you've done something for them. That's what acts of service, you know what I mean? It's if that person is the person that always cleans the bathroom, and then you do it, then yes, that's an act of service. Anybody else? Acts of service. A special meal. Yeah. Dropping off and picking up laundry or dry cleaning, right? Running bath water. Bringing the coffee upstairs, making the coffee, right? Yes? Cleaning your car. Yeah, girl. Yes. Yes. When I was married, it's like, for real, why am I taking my car to the car wash? And I got a husband. What's right? He's supposed to do that. No. That's the other point. That's the other point I want to make, since I'm being silly. That we all have expectations, right? When we engage in relationships, we have expectations. And what I want to say about expectations is that expectations must first be known. Don't make anybody guess what you want, right? And then they have to be agreed upon, right? Because even if they're known and he says or she says no, right? So it's like, I felt like, okay, I got everything inside the house. You take care of everything outside of the house. You take the garbage down the hill on trash day. He could have said, no, I'm not doing that. And then we have to compromise, right? And figure out how that's going to get done. You might have to pay the trash people an extra few dollars to come up the hill to get but at any rate, expectations must be known, and then they must be agreed upon. Okay? Okay, so that's acts of service. And then quality time. All I want is a little bit of your time. Okay, don't answer the phone. Don't get on the computer. Okay, don't answer the doorbell, right? I mean, unfortunately, I was married to a pastor, so he had to do all those things. So I was really in trouble, right? But, okay, quality time. There's a lot of you in here whose love language primary is quality time. And so, yes. And so when even married people have to have like a date night, when I was married, we had Friday nights was our date night, right? So even when you're married, you need to set aside some time that's for the two of you, without the children, without anybody else, just your time to spend with each other. Anybody have any comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, mine was quality time, and I immediately remember that even with friends, I hate being squeezed in their day. Like, I can see you between 12 and 1, and and it's like that kind of friend who really is one of my dearest friends. It means she's gonna get there at 12:10, and she's gonna be checking her thing to leave at 10 to 1. And that just irritates me so much. And our relationship, even as friends who live 3,000 miles apart, has gotten much better now that we've gotten older and she's not rushing so much.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And so it does make sense. As you look at what your primary and secondary love language is, and you reflect upon relationships that you've had, does it make sense? Yes.
Yeah. For me, I didn't do the assessment when I figured out mine. I went through one of the examples they say in the book is like, go through and see how your parents showed you love and how did you feel love from your parents. And I've used the example of my dad, and whenever, like, I didn't live with my dad, and we went to visit every weekend, but my dad worked 2 or 3 jobs, and he was always busy. But whenever we did spend time together, it was always like it was just, it could have been 5 minutes, but it was your 5 minutes, and it was just the best 5 minutes, and everybody had all his jobs, knew who I was, and it was special,
Right.
and it really, really meant something. And it's just like, you know, I realized, because I thought words of affirmation was mine, because I can talk and show you see.
Right.
But, you know, but I realized, I was like, you know what? I've had people tell me stuff, but then when their actions don't show it with the quality, we can spend a lot of time together, but it's not quality. You're doing something else.
Right.
Or you physically with me, but you mentally someplace else. I would much rather you be quality.
And so, yes, sir.
I just want to ask one question. I'm not saying I do, but I'm not saying I don't, right? But quality time, well, no, quality time was mine also. What does that mean as far as from a relationship standpoint, as far as your character?
Well,
What happened? You know what I mean? Is what I'm trying to say.
So I'm not sure about what your character is, but what I can say, in a relationship, what you require is quality time. You require someone to spend some time with you where they give you their undivided attention. They're not distracted by other things. And that says, I love you to you. Right?
Could it be mistaken as could it be you needing that as full undivided attention? Could that be kind of like borderline controlling, or I don't want to miss, you know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Control.
Because
Control
a
is
lot of times,
Because
the reason is sometimes when you in the midst of quality time, you talk with somebody, you know, you want their attention. You want, you know, hey, if we're together, like you, for instance.
Well,
when
quality
you
time, I'm sorry for interrupting you,
Yeah,
but quality time doesn't necessarily have to be engaging in conversation.
Okay.
It could be
It's your
watching a
presence.
movie. Yes,
Yes, your
sir.
presence.
Since it is quality time and you're in a relationship, it'll be undivided if both of you have communicated together prior to coming together. So therefore, it is quality time. So therefore, when you guys are together, there's no discussion about, or even a question about it being undivided, because you guys have already agreed together that this is the day, this is the time that we're going to spend our quality time together, and no one is going to come in between that, because why, we discussed it, and that's what makes it quality time.
Right, amen.
Right.
It is being present.
It is being
Just
present.
being in the moment
In the
with,
moment.
sharing it with the person that you love, that you're intimate with, like being there.
Absolutely.
Just right there, you're together, you know you are, you're communicating, you're just sitting there, even if you just feel the
Watching a
same way.
movie. That's
Whatever.
right. That's right. Yes, ma'am.
What you said made me think of me and my husband, and he likes to spend time with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that if he doesn't get what he feels is the appropriate amount of time with me,
Mhm.
he can act out in other ways that may be viewed as controlling. But the fact of the matter is, he likes to spend time with me, and that's a need. And if I'm not meeting that need, just like, you know, with the kids, if I'm not meeting their needs, they act out in different ways. And so I just remind myself, there's worse things than having a husband that lets him spend time with me.
Yeah.
You better know it. You better know it.
And what I was gonna say is that, I think the difference that will make something controlling or not is when you are not giving the other person a choice. Because the other person has a choice. Like, you could request, you could say, I like quality time, I like physical touch, I like any of the languages of love. But if you make the request and they don't do it, back to Ms. Van Horn's statement about unconditional love, you still gotta love them anyway. And you have to be patient, and you might just gotta keep finding ways to get your quality time where you're not controlling. Because I mean, I think that if you want quality time and you trying to get her to sit there and talk to you, and she got the kids and she got dinner and she got all this kind of stuff going on, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you missing. Yeah, you can get your quality time, but there's a time and place for everything. So I think that choice element, as long as you realize that this is their choice, and so if they're making the choice to do it, you know, we gonna work together.
So in addition to that, knowing your partner's love language can be used positively and it can be used negatively. You can know that your partner's love language is words of affirmation, and you can sit there and say, I wish I would say something nice to him today, or to her today, right? You can use it to the positive and you can use it to the negative. And so maybe that goes into play with what you're saying in terms of being controlling, because I can hold back, right? I'm like, I'm not saying nothing nice today, right? Because I'm angry or because I didn't get what I wanted. You know, it was just Valentine's Day and the roses wasn't long enough and, you know, the candy wasn't sweet enough. And so I wish I would say a confirming word, affirming word to him, right? Or her. So it could be used as a positive or negative. But the premise of this is that you want your partner to feel love. And so you choose to. It's like the two ladies that were speaking French and was speaking Spanish. So at the end of the day, the woman who speaks Spanish is going to learn French. So she can talk to the one that speaks French. And the ones that speaks French is going to learn Spanish. So she can talk to the other lady, right? So I'm going to learn words of affirmation because I want my partner to feel affirmed, right? Anybody else? Because at the end of the day, so the last one is physical touch. We just have a couple more minutes. Physical touch, right? So we all know what touchy-feely kind of people are, right? I'm one of them. Okay, we have some in the room.
Sorry, but
when we go down the street, we got to hold hands. You know, walking across the street, I just love it, right?
Get your hands off there.
When we sitting down watching TV, I'm gonna touch your ankle or your foot with my foot or something, right? Right? Because I just gotta touch something. Right. Right? When you're watching television, that's what. So if your partner or your husband or your wife, depending on your situation, when they're in bed and they like, you know, because some people like, oh, please, can you just get over there on that side? You know, it's too hot, it's too whatever, right? But then they try to slide their ankle over there, right? It's because their love language is physical touch. So you have to make the sacrifice and let them touch you. Right? Yeah, you do. Yes, you do. It's easier because everybody wants to be happy in a relationship. In love, you want to be happy and you want to feel good. You want to feel love and you want your partner to feel love. So just let me touch your toes, right? and go on to sleep. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Anybody have any words about physical touch? You know, or somebody that's every time I see you, girl, how you doing? I'm always gonna hug, right? Right. I'm gonna hug you. Right? That's somebody whose love language is physical touch. Yes, sir.
It's good to offer massages.
Yes, sir. It certainly is. That will always work. Always works. Yes. Yes. Anybody else? Is she trying to tell us it's time to go?
I don't know. I think she's kind of enjoying it.
Oh. Anybody else? Anybody else about physical touch? Okay. So, has this done anything for you?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. So, one last thing that I'm going to give you. If you can imagine, because remember, I'm visual, I got to see it, right? If you can imagine a bucket of water, right? I'm from New York, so I'm sorry. Every now and then, now and again, a bucket of water, right? And then the water needs to stay at a consistent level at the top. You need to keep the water level at the top, okay? So what happens when you engage in relationships, when you give, when you pour out of yourself, whether it's for a relationship, whether it's for a child, whether it's for the community, every time you pour out of yourself, every time you give of yourself, you emptying out some water, right? But remember, the water needs to stay at an even level, right? So when your water empties out, you need to get filled back up, right? And so now you need to know where you can get filled up. You need to know who you can go to, who's going to affirm you, who's going to give you some acts of service, right? Who's going to physically touch you, who's going to give you some gifts, right? You need to know where you can go, right? If you have no way of getting your water tank filled back up, sometimes you have to hold back. You're giving. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because for you to survive, your tank, the water level has to remain at the same level. God bless you. Thank you for your attention.
Can I? Is it okay if I have one of these?
Yeah.
Can I have one of these?
Absolutely. Yeah. Make sure you get I got one.
That's fine. All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
It was awesome.
Thank you for participating.
And we missed it. What's
Thank you
this?
so much.
For
Husband,
husbands?
okay.
For singles?
Why?
Are you single?
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Sure.
You married?
I am.
Okay. Okay. Did you get the single, sir? Okay. Okay. Yep, you sure can. There you go.
Thank you. I grew up
There's another single.
We gotta make copies of that.
Okay,
Copies of that.
okay,
Copies of that.
okay,
Copies of that.
okay,
Copies of that.
okay.
Copies of that.